Tonight, golf legend Tiger Woods hospitalized after a horrific car crash. The images from the crash site near Los Angeles. Woods suffering multiple leg injuries and rushed to surgery after his SUV rolled over off the road. First responders using an axe to extricate him through the windshield. His condition and what investigators said just moments ago. The dramatic testimony, Capitol security officials on failures before and during the deadly riot, the critical FBI warning missed, and what took so long to deploy the National Guard. Also on the hot seat, COVID vaccine makers with demand sky high. Can they meet their promised targets? Findings in the Daniel Prude investigation, the unarmed black man who died after police put a hood over his head and restrained him. What the state attorney general announced today. The wife of drug kingpin El Chapo. What happened at her first court appearance after her arrest at a U.S. airport. President Biden announcing plans to visit Texas this week. Millions there still in need of aid. And after the massive power grid failure, who is now resigning? And New York City's two major arenas reopening to NBA fans for the first time in nearly a year. But is it safe enough?
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. There are few names in sports more recognizable than Tiger Woods, a towering figure in professional golf for more than 2 decades, and now tonight being treated for serious injuries in a Los Angeles hospital after a devastating single-vehicle crash. Woods' SUV tumbling off the road into a field early this morning, leaving a trail of debris. The front end of his vehicle crushed. Woods himself trapped, freed from the wreckage by first responders, and rushed to a hospital where he underwent emergency surgery. Word of the crash and his injury sending shockwaves across the sports world, reflecting on a golf icon and a career marked by soaring highs and crushing setbacks. Our Miguel Almaguer is there for us tonight.
His mangled SUV rolled over multiple times and was found on an embankment with airbags deployed. Firefighters needed hand tools and axe to extricate golfing legend Tiger Woods, who was pulled through his windshield. Driving alone, his car careened off the road just after 7 a.m. outside Los Angeles.
Have a rollover with someone trapped.
Suffering multiple leg injuries after the single-car crash in Rancho Palos Verdes, Woods was rushed to UCLA Harbor Medical Center and immediately underwent surgery. The extent of his injuries still unknown.
Thankfully, the interior was more or less intact, which kind of gave him the cushion to survive what's otherwise would have been a fatal crash.
On the golf course yesterday with celebrities like Dwayne Wade.
How good am I, or how bad am I?
Good.
Woods was hosting an invitational, offering lessons but not playing after recovering from his 5th back surgery. For now, the cause of the early morning crash is unknown.
I am deeply sorry for my irresponsible and selfish behavior I engaged in.
In 2009, Woods famously crashed his SUV outside his Florida mansion and was cited for careless driving. 8 years later, in Jupiter, Florida, he was arrested for DUI. Investigators say he had painkillers and other drugs in his system. But Woods did make a comeback, winning the Masters again in 2019. Now, once more, the 45-year-old's career hangs in the balance after a devastating car crash that could have cost him his life.
Miguel, you're at the hospital where Tiger Woods is. What do we know?
Lester, when paramedics found Tiger Woods, they said he was in serious condition. Tonight here at the hospital, he's described as in stable condition. They say a seatbelt may have saved his life. Over at the crash scene, investigators there say there was no evidence of impairment. There's also no sign that he tried braking before the accident. Paramedics said he was conscious when they found him, but he was not able to stand on his own feet. Lester, back to you.
All right, Miguel Almaguer in Los Angeles. Thanks. I want to bring in Mike Tirico of NBC Sports, who's been following this and Woods' career. Mike, Tiger Woods has been through so much through his career.
Lester, on our radar since he was just 2 or 3 years old, until great success as a teenager and one of the most successful careers, not just in the history of this sport, but any sport. Physical injuries, personal life issues, it's all played out in front of us. Still, Tiger has not only given a generation of fans hope and happiness, he's also given a generation of golfers a reason to be golfers and a lot of financial success as well. That's why the outpouring, that's why the impact of this event, and people happy to see that it looks like these are not life-threatening injuries with Woods.
Mike Tirico, good to have you on tonight. Thanks. The three former officials responsible for security at the U.S. Capitol were on the hot seat today, telling members of Congress a failure of intelligence agencies hampered their response to the Capitol riot. Here's Pete Williams.
The former chief of the U.S. Capitol Police says he never received any intelligence warning that armed rioters would storm the building trying to stop the presidential vote count.
We properly planned for a mass demonstration with possible violence. What we got was a military-style coordinated assault on my officers and a violent takeover of the Capitol building.
He says he thought it would be something like the earlier pro-Trump demonstrations with the potential for more violence. Speaking publicly for the first time since the siege, the former House and Senate sergeants at arms, forced to resign like the former chief, accused U.S. intelligence agencies of underestimating the extremist group threat. The FBI did send a raw intelligence report the night before the riot warning of an attack on the Capitol, but Sund insists it never got to him, and the D.C. police chief says it was just an email.
I would certainly think that something as violent as an insurrection in the Capitol would warrant a phone call or something.
Today's hearing also exposed breakdowns in getting National Guard help. Sund says that day at 1:09, he tried to get Guard help in a call to the House Sergeant at Arms, who says that call didn't happen.
I have no recollection of a conversation with Chief Sund at that time.
But all agreed that when the request finally did get to the Army, there was immediate pushback. The D.C. police chief says he was shocked.
I was just stunned that I have officers that were out there literally fighting for their lives, and there was not an immediate response.
Sund was pressed by Senator Rob Portman. If the Secret Service trains for a riot at the White House, why don't police do it for the Capitol?
When you talk about infiltration, you talk about a large insurrection like we saw on the January 6th? No.
Well, it seems obvious that you would have training on responding to an infiltration.
The FBI and the Pentagon get their turn to testify next week. Still no action on forming a 9/11-style commission to do a thorough investigation. Lester?
All right, Pete, thanks. Let's turn now to the COVID crisis. More than 44 million Americans have received at least one vaccine dose, while hospitalizations continue to decline, now at about 55,000. And today, top vaccine makers were grilled about whether they'll be able to deliver the doses they've promised. Tom Costello has more.
With the FDA expected to grant emergency authorization for Johnson & Johnson's single-dose vaccine within days, the hope is that vaccine supply will meet demand within months. So far, nearly 20 million Americans are fully vaccinated. Today, Congress asked all 5 vaccine makers for a status report.
Given current production levels, are you going to be able to meet that deadline?
Pfizer.
We anticipate that we will be on track to deliver those 300 million doses before the end of July.
Moderna also pledging 300 million by the end of July.
We do believe we're on track to meet those deadlines.
J&J as soon as next week.
We are on track to deliver the 100 million doses by the end of June.
AstraZeneca not yet approved.
We'll deliver the 300 million soon after.
Novavax not yet approved.
We would be prepared by the end of June to produce that 100 million doses.
All of those doses could lead to a vaccine glut in the U.S. Meanwhile, L.A.'s mass vaccination sites are back up and running after being resupplied. And several states are now prioritizing teachers, including California, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Connecticut. In New York, 81 people who received shots have learned they'll need a third shot because their vaccine doses had not been kept cold enough, though pose no risk. Vaccine makers say it's still not clear how long vaccine protection lasts.
Unfortunately, the only real way we will know about the duration of that protection is over time.
Vaccine makers say that's why they're looking at new booster shots that may be required for years to guard against new virus variants. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello tonight. Thank you. In just 60 seconds, no indictments in the case of Daniel Prude, who died in police custody. We'll have late reaction to that. And the wife of El Chapo appearing in court today on charges of international drug trafficking. Just breaking tonight, no charges against 7 police officers involved in the death of Daniel Prude in Rochester, New York, as the state attorney general calls for reforms to make police who use deadly force more accountable. Here's Ron Allen.
Tonight, a New York State grand jury deciding not to file charges against 7 Rochester police officers in the death of 41-year-old Daniel Prude last March. The incident seen on police body camera footage obtained and released months later by Prude's family shows him naked, shouting, and being restrained with handcuffs, his head covered with a hood. Officers say he was spitting and saying he had COVID-19. New York's Attorney General Letitia James saying the officers should have been held accountable.
I know that the Prude family will rightfully be disappointed by this outcome, but ultimately we have to respect the decision.
Prude was visiting relatives in Rochester. His brother had called 911 asking for mental health professionals, concerned Prude was having a breakdown. An autopsy provided by the family said he died days later from complications of asphyxia in the setting of a physical restraint.
They could not show no type of respect for a human life.
Tonight, the Attorney General saying the criminal justice system is broken.
The system too often allows officers to use deadly force unnecessarily and without consequence.
Tonight, in a statement, Rochester police calling for calm and respect for the grand jury decision, adding that the 7 officers remain on leave while an internal investigation continues. Ron Allen, NBC News.
The wife of notorious drug kingpin El Chapo made her first court appearance today after she was arrested at a D.C. area airport on drug trafficking charges. Let's get more on this now from Gotti Schwartz.
2 years after walking into a federal court to support her husband, tonight El Chapo's wife, Emma Coronel Aispuro, is fighting for her own freedom. Her mugshot taken shortly before her court appearance today via video conference where she was denied bond and if convicted could face life in prison. The dual U.S.-Mexican citizen, who is still married to one of the world's most notorious drug kingpins, now faces conspiracy to distribute cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and marijuana into the United States. After El Chapo, whose real name is Joaquin Guzman, went to prison in 2014, new court documents allege his wife acted as a messenger between the drug lord and his lieutenants, associates, and sons. And when El Chapo famously escaped that Mexican prison using a tunnel, court documents say she helped orchestrate the plan.
What you see in a criminal complaint is the bare bones. There could be more.
Tonight, her attorney saying, "We don't know enough about the case to give clarity to the public," adding, "We'll do what we can to get her out of this mess." The former beauty queen, who married El Chapo when she was 18, was arrested at Dulles International Airport outside Washington, D.C. After Guzman was extradited to the U.S. in 2017 and before he was sentenced to life in prison, evidence at his U.S. trial showed his wife's involvement in his billion-dollar criminal empire, an accusation she's denied.
El Chapo was the head of a very, very violent and dangerous drug cartel, and it's obvious from the affidavit regarding his wife that she was helping him in almost every respect.
Tonight, the kingpin and his beauty queen, forever separated by prison, but perhaps destined to share the same fate. Gotti Schwartz, NBC News.
President Biden plans to visit storm-ravaged Texas on Friday, where millions are still desperate for aid. And after the massive power failure, top members of the board that oversees the state's grid are resigning. Morgan Chesky is in Dallas.
Tonight in Texas, struggling families still in need of food, water, and shelter.
This is all my damage, everything damaged in here.
Kathy Saul's thankful she's okay. Last week, water from a burst pipe caved in her ceiling, her home already dark from losing power.
The inside of your house is filling up with water. Outside, it's 10 degrees. What are you thinking?
I think I'm going to die now. Freezing, cold. I really did.
In Houston, Monica Ware tapped out savings to put her family of 6 in a hotel. Water damage making her home unlivable.
I opened the door and walked in, and I stepped in the puddles of water.
The widespread damage raising new details about the Texas power grid. NBC News has learned in late 2020, the Texas Public Utility Commission, governor appointed, ended its relationship with Texas Reliability Entity, a nonprofit making sure energy companies follow state guidelines, including winterization.
When you fire the entity that's supposed to ensure reliability in the system with no backup plan, that was a failure of oversight as well.
In Dallas, vaccination sites now back open, prioritizing thousands who missed their shot due to weather.
And tonight we've learned that 4 board members of ERCOT, the agency that manages the state power grid, have resigned. Each of them lived out of state. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says he welcomes the resignations and plans to further investigate. Lester?
Morgan Chesky in Dallas tonight. Thanks, Morgan. Up next, could the vaccine come to you? The innovative way to get high-risk communities vaccinated. With so many struggling to get the COVID vaccine, it's even tougher for people who can't travel or sign up online. Our Ann Thompson tonight on programs to bring the vaccine to them.
This is Hope on Wheels, pulling up just steps from 74-year-old Sheila Moore's front door.
I feel blessed because we have to go too far.
Like 1/5 of homes in Baltimore, Sheila's doesn't have internet access. She has no cell phone, no car, and no way to get the vaccine.
So you're getting the Moderna vaccine today?
Until this mobile clinic brought a shot to her.
I don't drive, so it would be difficult for me to get any other place.
What started as a primary care van, then morphed into a mobile site, now travels across the city to get shots to the most vulnerable.
So this is one of our exam rooms.
Nurse practitioner Kelly McCallum helps run the program.
I think in minority communities, especially in the black community in Baltimore City, representation is really important.
Those same communities can also be wary of government vaccine programs.
I think once people get vaccinated and they have positive outcomes, then they'll tell their family.
Like Baltimore, Vernon, Connecticut's vaccine rollout got off to a rocky start.
How did you know it wasn't working?
When there were 50 people signed up for a clinic that we advertised 204 slots for.
So Vernon went old school.
And where did you get that vaccine?
It's call center for appointments, a lifeline for 60-year-old Mace.
I'm a dinosaur when it comes to the cell phone.
Vernon holds up to 10 clinics a week, targeting the elderly and low income at places like this community center's food pantry. Neighbors Cheryl Galovich and Luz Nieto live 2 blocks away.
Neither one of you have a car? No.
Luz takes 2 buses to get to her grocery store cashier's job.
How much do you worry about getting the virus?
It's a scare because you never know who is around you.
Cheryl was hesitant about the vaccine.
What changed your mind?
The convenience.
Easy when prevention is just around the corner. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Vernon, Connecticut.
As the country slowly reopens, a milestone tonight for the one-time epicenter of the pandemic. Sports venues open again in New York City, but there's also a warning to those who have already been vaccinated. Gabe Gutierrez now with the latest on that.
Tonight, despite the urgent push to reopen, Dr. Anthony Fauci is warning even if you get vaccinated, there are things you still should not do.
For example, indoor dining, theaters, places where people congregate. That's because of the safety of society.
He says a vaccine may protect you, but the evidence is unclear how much it prevents you from spreading the virus to others. Still, more sports arenas and stadiums are getting back in the game. At least 21 in the NFL, 11 in the NHL, and now 14 in the NBA. At New York's iconic Madison Square Garden, Knicks fans are returning tonight for the first time, but at just 10% capacity.
It just enhances that, that experience of being in the game rather than just sitting home watching it on your couch.
Guest relations employee Samantha Carlisle had been out of work for months.
I'm so excited to have fans back. This is the moment we've been waiting for.
Across town at the Barclays Center, home of the Brooklyn Nets, they're also taking a shot and making fans feel at home. Socially distanced couches and snazzy separated viewing areas.
How much of a game changer is this?
It's huge. Just 300 fans to start before working their way up to 1,800.
I think a measured and responsible way to try to introduce fans back.
Fans are required to wear masks and have taken a COVID PCR test less than 72 hours beforehand. Then, after a temperature screening and a rapid test, a green light to enter.
It's a massive building, and we're used to having close to 20,000 people in here. So we're going to have a lot less than that, but I think it's the first step.
And it's not just sports. The first potential concert here at Madison Square Garden is scheduled for late July. Lester?
All right, thanks. Up next, I'll have some reflections on our state of the struggle. Finally, as we near the end of Black History Month, this week NBC News is focusing on the state of the struggle, the push and pull along the winding road to acceptance, opportunity, and equality for Black Americans. Race always seems to be the conversation that's easy to have at those moments that we can't look away, when the pain or outrage is so extreme, when we're forced to see with fresh eyes, hear with new awareness that the struggle is not finished. Too often, though, it's a short window of engagement. Time passes, attentions focus elsewhere. The struggle fades into the broader public shadows, despite the tireless efforts of those shining the light. In the meantime, we rightfully celebrate moments of Black achievement, each a symbol of a growing enlightenment that we want to hope brings us closer to the end of the struggle than the beginning. If only it was the only measure of progress. To truly know where we're going, we have to take a full account of where we are right now, the state of the struggle.